Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into something called the diathesis stress model.
Hmm.
It's this really interesting way of thinking about why some people might be more vulnerable to certain conditions when, life gets tough.
Yeah.
Our mission today is basically to unpack that how our built-in vulnerabilities kind of mesh with life's stressors.
Right. And the core idea is actually quite elegant. The diathesis stress model basically says that developing a condition often needs both things. A predisposition, that's the diathesis bit,
Okay.
and some kind of environmental challenge or stress. Just one often isn't enough.
So it's not simply nature or nurture, it's how they dance together, essentially. Like, take a genetic vulnerability, maybe for mental illness. How does that connect with, say, a really stressful childhood?
Well, think of it like your genes might give you a, let's say, slightly more sensitive internal alarm system for stress.
Yeah,
That's your diathesis.
got it.
Then a big stressor, like you mentioned, maybe trauma or neglect in childhood,
Yeah,
acts like someone setting off that alarm constantly.
right.
It pushes that sensitive system, potentially, tipping it over into developing something like anxiety or depression.
And the sources we looked at mentioned specific conditions where this model is often used as an explanation. Which ones really pop up?
Oh, definitely. Depression and schizophrenia are probably the most cited examples. There's a lot of research pointing to that mixed genetic factors meeting stressful life events and how they develop.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it feels like a shift away from seeing something like mental illness as purely biological, doesn't it?
Exactly. That's a key point. Instead of just looking for, say, a brain chemical imbalance, this model pulls in the psychological and the social picture too.
Mm.
It feels much more, well, complete.
And it's not just a theory, right? There's actual evidence for this,
Yeah.
particularly in how we grow up.
Absolutely. If you look at developmental psychology, you see studies showing how early life stress can interact with a kid's inherent temperament,
Okay.
and that interaction can shape their vulnerability later on. It really highlights how crucial certain periods in development are.
So if we understand that interaction, maybe spot it early, does that give us a way to step in, to intervene somehow?
Precisely. That's the hope. If we can identify individuals who might have a higher diathesis, maybe through family history or other markers, we can potentially focus efforts on reducing their exposure to major stressors.
Or building up their defenses?
Yes, or
So
building their coping skills, their resilience.
you mentioned building defenses. The sources talked about protective factors. What sort of things act like buffers?
Yeah, protective factors. Think about things like having really strong social support, good friends, family,
Mm-hmm.
or developing healthy ways to cope with problems, but good coping strategies.
Right.
Even things like having a secure attachment in childhood or certain personality traits like being generally optimistic. These can cushion the blow of stress.
Okay. And does this idea stretch beyond mental health? Could it apply to physical conditions too?
Increasingly, yes, we're seeing the diathesis stress framework applied to physical health as well.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, for example, someone might have a genetic predisposition towards an autoimmune disease,
Right?
but it might only actually develop, only get triggered after they experience a period of significant physical or maybe even intense emotional stress.
Wow. Okay. The sources also brought up epigenetics. How does that piece fit into this puzzle?
Epigenetics. It's fascinating. It basically provides a mechanism for how the environment can talk to our genes.
How so?
Well, you have your underlying genetic code, your predisposition. But environmental factors like stress can actually lead to chemical changes around the genes. These changes can influence whether certain genes are turned on or off.
So the stress doesn't change the genes, but changes how they work.
Exactly. It affects gene expression. So a vulnerability might be sitting there, but stress could flip the switch, contributing to the condition appearing.
Okay, that adds another layer. So thinking practically, how might doctors or therapists use this model when helping someone?
Well, understanding this interplay allows clinicians to create more personalized treatment plans. They can consider both the person's potential vulnerabilities, maybe biological ones, and the specific stressors they're facing or have faced.
So it's not just one size fits all?
Not at all. It might mean combining, say, therapy to manage stress and build coping skills with perhaps medication addressing some biological aspects. It's about tackling both sides of the equation.
Right. So Boiling it down, the big takeaway seems to be that for many conditions, it's this complex interaction, this back and forth between what we're born with and what life throws at us.
That's it precisely. It's a dynamic interplay, not just one single cause.
Definitely gives you something to think about personally, doesn't it? Considering your own makeup and your life experiences. What kinds of stressors might perhaps affect you more significantly? And maybe more importantly, what protective factors could you actively build or strengthen in your own life? Food for thought. Thanks for digging into this with me.